Hello? Anybody home?
Today, I want you to open your mind.
I've almost come to the conclusion that the story is so damning that the mass of people can't deal with it.
We are in process of developing a whole series of techniques to get people actually to love their servitude.
We face a hostile ideology, global in scope, atheistic in character, ruthless in purpose, and insidious in method.
For we are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence.
To change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government.
The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists.
It has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the ripping imprint of a boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time.
If you can get people to consent to the state of affairs in which they are living, then you have a much more easily controllable society than you would if you were relying wholly on clubs and firing squads and concentration camps.
Tools of conquest do not necessarily come with bombs and explosions and fallout. There are weapons that are simply fun. Prejudices.
As you connect the dots between different people, organizations, religions, history, suddenly the picture starts to form.
The kingdom of God is within man, not one man, nor a group of men.
Someone born in the United States is not more special than someone born in Mexico. They're just vehicles for the consciousness to experience.
They do not want your children to be educated. They do not want you to think too much.
It was learned that the aliens had been and were then manipulating masses of people through secret societies, witchcraft, magic, the occult, and religion.
They reach into our children. Music, television, books.
Prey on children's innocence.
How can I disprove lies that are stamped with an official seal?
So if you have the opportunity to stand next to one of these machines, it feels like an altar to an alien god.
Genetic power is the most awesome force the planet's ever seen, but you wield it like a kid that's found his dad's gun.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc is now in the possession of the Army.
Too many others know what's happening out there. And no government agency has jurisdiction over the truth.
Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth, the dignity, the rights of man, that state is obsolete. A case to be filed under M for Mankind in the Twilight Zone.
About time some of you got acquainted with the real hard truth.
You don't connect the dots, just a mass of what's all this about.
You are listening to the Secret Teachings Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Gable. Thank you so much for tuning in to this Christmas edition of TST Radio, this Christmas special. It's beginning to look a lot like Krampus tonight on the Secret Teachings. If you'd like to contact the show, you can email rdgable@yahoo.com. Find the show online by searching www.thesecretteachings.info or tstradio.info. Links to social media, the archive, and more, all available on the website. You'll also find copies of my books like Occult Arcana, which is a massive occult, not necessarily an encyclopedia, but it's big like an encyclopedia. And you can find it other places, but the best place to get it is to get it on the website. And I will get a copy out to you as soon as possible. There's a big section on the origin of holy holidays, and that includes Christmas. There's also a subsection of that section on Christmas monsters, I guess we could call them, and what those monsters represent. Krampus is a very popular monster. I think a very misunderstood monster. He's not the only one. I often give this example because I think it's the easiest to understand. There's a yokai, which is Japanese for monster or kind of a spirit. And there's a yokai called kappa. And this kappa is a water spirit. And people tell stories about the kappa in the water, in the river, abducting children and harming them. And if you hear that story, especially if you're very religiously faithful, you might think that's a demon, a child predator. You tend to have that kind of an interpretation. However, it's a metaphor and it's a symbol. rather than explaining to the kids that if you go into the water and the water is very strong, the current, and it might suck you under, and the kids' eyes are glazing over. They just want to play, and you try to explain to them. But if you can't breathe and the water gets in your lungs and you drown and you die, and that's not good. That kids don't understand that. But if you teach them, there's a monster. It's not a particularly vile monster. It's usually has like what looks like a frog. What do they call those? Like little lily pads on its head. Kind of has almost like a comical face. If you've ever seen Spirited Away, the famous Studio Ghibli movie, it's got that yokai look to it. And you teach the kids that this monster will get you. And it's not much different than teaching kids that if they're good, Santa will bring you gifts. And if you're bad, he'll bring you coal. But in the Germanic world, at least, and in other parts of the world, if you were bad, then spirits and creatures came to punish you. They were doing the work, if you will, of Santa Claus, using that as a point of reference. So when you read a story like the Kappa, it's actually there to protect the children from drowning in the river. And if you read the stories of Belsnickel, if you read the stories of Grilya, if you read the stories of Krampus, then you'll learn, if you pay attention and try to understand the meaning behind it, that these are actually stories that are meant to protect children. They're actually meant to protect communities. They're actually meant to maintain the social order, to maintain morality. And if you don't participate in that and you choose to go astray, then Belsnickel comes and hits you with a stick, and Krampus puts you in a bag and drags you away. And I've just always thought that, especially for Christians that get really upset with all the Krampus imagery around this time of the year, there's been I think an increase in the number of festivals that are had. Not so much in the U.S., but maybe in Europe, going back to traditional roots. Some people are having these festivals today. I've said this before, if you're opposed to Krampus, or if you're opposed to Diwali, people were very upset about Diwali, lighting candles in the White House, but have no problem with Hanukkah. Newsflash, it's the same thing. Well, actually, Diwali is more about light, and Hanukkah is more about a temple rededication ceremony. But the whole thing is very similar. It's based on the idea of light, and light is a good thing. If you're opposed to Diwali and light, Diwali is a Sanskrit word. It means either festival of lights or row of lights. Then it sounds like you're opposed to light. It sounds like you're opposed to good. It sounds like you're opposed to morality. It sounds like you're kind of opposed to all the things that you think that you're not opposed to. So it's always been confusing. Rather than me sitting here for our Christmas special tonight and giving you what you probably already know from my vantage point and from my book and from the Secret Teachings, we have a special guest tonight. We have Andrew Cox, a good friend of ours, and he is the owner and operator of one of the, I think, and I think others would agree with me, one of the best occult bookstores in the U.S. I've traveled across the whole country, and it's definitely, I would say, the best in terms of availability. Occult bookstore that I've been to anywhere. There's a nice one in Orlando, but it's super, super small. It's like the size of my studio in terms of the book selection. Andrew has a whole store. It's a great store. It's in Tucson, Arizona. You could visit it if you're there. He also does stuff online. We'll learn about that, and we'll also learn about Krampus, because Andrew Cox is not just the owner of Nexus Occult Books and Oddities. He's also, and I should have had you wear the mask, Andrew, but he's also Krampus for Christmas time. So, Andrew, thank you for coming on the Secret Teachings tonight. I really appreciate it. It's beginning to look a lot like Krampus. Give us some background on Krampus and yourself. I mean, what makes you an expert in this? I think you are. And also tell us a little bit about Pictures with Krampus to get us started.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me back. I always enjoy coming on with you. We always have lots of fun. I'm Andrew Cox. I'm the owner of Nexus Occult Books and Oddities in Tucson, Arizona. This is our 4th year of doing free pictures with Krampus. So we do it every Saturday and Sunday for 4 weekends straight. We just finished yesterday was our last day of doing it. It's awesome. We had over 500 people come through of all ages. We had over 24 pets, including dogs and cats and snakes, come in. And it's such a fun community event that we do every year. And the community really likes it. And it's a lot of fun for us. So my son actually played the part of Krampus this year. I did it last year, but my son did it this year. I don't see how he does it. The mask is huge and heavy, and we turn the entire tarot room at Nexus into a Krampus's lair, and my daughter's the little helper elf that helps people take their pictures. So if you guys check out our Instagram or Facebook, that's just at Nexus Occult, you can see a lot of the photos of people and the fun that they had. The story of Krampus is a fun one, and it's an interesting one. And you kind of summed it up perfectly with the Japanese, the kappa, the turtle spirit. Krampus was a teaching tool, really. I mean, you don't go out to the forest at night, especially during the winter time, or Krampus would get you. You know, when your parents call you to come in, you listen, because if you don't, the Krampus will get you. And so, yeah, he's definitely taken on, or he did take on the form of that, you know, quote unquote demon, when Christianity got a hold of him. But he was definitely not a demon to start with. So the word Krampus actually comes from the German word claw, and he was a product of the wild hunt. Krampus is like the embodiment of the harshness of European, Scandinavian, especially winter. You know, the Krampus is really comes from Germany, and like the Wild Hunt, especially where his origins really started, was Germanic, Norse, and Celtic folklore. And just picture the gods riding across the night sky along with an army of dead spirits. You know, they would raid through the forest and stuff. And Krampus had a lot of different names depending on where you were located, but Krampus was the one that really took hold and stuck.
That night sky, that night ride, that's I think partly, or maybe more than partly, it's largely a metaphor for the winter weather, right? The
Correct.
gray skies, the storms.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the harshness of it. I mean, Krampus was around prior to Christ. He's a pre-Christian forest spirit. You know, his appearance of the horns represent kind of comparative to the ibex you would find in the Alps, and he would have hooves, but his face was human. You know, he had the two eyes, a nose, he had the mouth, but the tongue that was long and would stick out. He had ears, but they were pointy. He had matted fur. You know, he did have hands, but with claws at the end. But you know, he did have the hoofs that you would hear, and wrapped in chains and bells. And yeah, he was a product of the harsh environment of the Europe winter time. You know, and parents used him as a teaching tool to listen and be wary of the forest during that time.
It's dangerous to go out into the forest, especially in the winter, especially as a child. It's dangerous to go down to the river and play. So that's why these stories were created. Funny thing is, I don't know if you know this. Have you ever heard of I don't mean to put you on the spot. You ever heard of the Namahage?
No.
The Namahage? You may have seen a picture of it. I will bring it up on the screen for you here. The Namahage, I knew the name and I knew the character, but last night my wife taught me what the tradition is.
Yeah.
You've seen this before?
I've seen this before, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So the Namahage, very similar to Krampus. Very similar because this is in Japan. It's a very ancient deity. It has the red face, or sometimes the blue face, like the Oni. So it's like an ogre, an orc, a monster, a demon, the devil. But it comes usually not so much Christmas. It's more so the New Year in the Orient. And it comes to your home. And just like Belsnickel, it comes to the door and it says, are there any bad children here?
Nice.
And if there's any bad children, I mean, I'll tell you what, the Germans are pretty intense. You know, they cut off hands and fingers, the grim fairy tales. It's pretty grim, right?
Right.
In Japan, she told me that the Namahage comes with a knife. And if you've been a bad kid, you get a knife. You get knifed.
Nice.
So, it's pretty violent and gory, but it's the same idea. And I find that so fascinating that from the Germanic countries all the way to the Far East, it's literally the same idea. It's this demonic looking spirit.
Right.
That comes to the house and says, who has been a good kid and who has been a bad kid? And the bad kids, they get punished.
Right. Yeah,
So every human sees the world in a very similar way. We come up with the same kinds of myths, Andrew. I find that to be a unifying thing.
I love that. Yeah, and you're right, because you can find so many different similarities throughout cultures all over the world that had, have had no contact with each other, but you still find a lot of these similarities in different stories. And the picture of Krampus up there, originally he would have a wicker basket on his back, and that's what he would put the kids in, and he would carry birch branches. And the birch branch was a symbol for corporal punishment back in the day. I remember as a kid growing up in Tennessee, you get the switch, your parents, grandparents hit you with the switch. The birch branch was was used in corporal punishment, but it was also a holy branch, a holy tree. So you getting hit with the birch branch was not just a symbol of punishment, but actually cleansing as well.
I actually didn't. I don't think I realized that.
Yeah.
That's really interesting because over here in Japan too, they use what are called. Well, they have different versions of it, but they use a tree called sakaki, and they don't necessarily hit you with it, but when they wave it over you or touch you with it, it has this very similar purifying quality.
Right.
Another universality dating back to ancient history. I mean, it's all about vegetation. That's what the holidays are all about. Vegetation veneration, I call it.
Nice.
Preserving nature, and nature is purifying. You go out and get some fresh air in the morning. That's purifying. What do people call it? Forest bathing today.
Yeah, that's
cleansing.
Right. Yeah.
Cleansing. Same idea, I think.
So many people need to go out and touch some grass, man.
Some people smoke some grass, but people need to
that's true too. Yeah, it wasn't until you saw Christianity, parading its way through Europe that Krampus took on the role of the demon. The issue with the Catholic Church is that they really couldn't control large sections of the Alps. There were so many different villages that were very remote, hard to get to. They were more focused on the larger cities than they were these smaller but spread out villages. And so they weren't really able to get rid of the idea of Krampus. And so what they did was they attached him to St. Nicholas. So you had St. Nicholas Day, which was December 6th, and then Krampus Night was December 5th. You have the Krampus Run, which is like in German Krampuslauf, something like that. And then you have the Krampus Night, which is celebrated the day before St. Nicholas Day. Obviously not the same as Christmas, but as time went on, it evolved into that. But yeah, so it was the Christian church that attached him to St. Nicholas, who was a 4th century saint. He was from Myra, which is now in Turkey, known for being really good to kids, And so the crazy thing about what they used to do in a lot of these villages was you would have St. Nicholas ride through town with other people, and he'd have his bishop robes on. He didn't have the Santa Claus look at that time. That's later with Coca-Cola, but he would go riding through town and giving out gifts and food and coins, things like that. It was very merry and nice. But then that night you would have Krampus, the group of Krampus behind him. And that at that time was you would have certain men would be chosen from the villages, and they would be wearing these Krampus costumes that were a lot of times passed down generation after generation. These are handmade. And the crazy thing is that you would have the Krampus go to different houses, and of course they're shaking their chains and their bells and rattling and knocking on the doors and the windows, scaring the hell out of the children. And then the St. Nicholas would open the door, and then you'd have the Krampus sometimes come in. But the St. Nicholas character would ask the kids, "Have you been good?" And of course, the kids are screaming, "Yes, yes, we're being good. We're saying our prayers. We're doing what we're told." And then the St. Nicholas character would ask the parents, who would immediately contradict what the children just said, like, no, they're not listening to us. They don't say their prayer. They don't eat their vegetables. And a lot of times the St. Nicholas would kind of nod to the Krampus in the room, who would, grab at the kids and scare them, getting the kids to swear that they'll say their prayers, that they'll behave. And, it's that idea
Krampus
of fear.
Is the muscle. Krampus is the muscle.
Yeah, exactly. But it's ritual, it's ritual. that the church was instilling fear, and that the only thing that could keep the evil demon Krampus away was the church.
So basically, like with anything else, you're taking an idea and incorporated it into a new dominant system of belief, and
Right.
then from that point, it expands and it kind of morphs and changes into something new. And I think that something similar has happened today. Maybe you disagree, but I'm curious to know what you think. When I see stories about Krampus festivals,
Mhm.
there's a handful in the U.S.
Yeah.
I feel like some people embrace it not because of the origins that we're discussing, but they embrace it because they like the devil or something. They like that, not just so much that they like the imagery, but they like the idea of the punishment. They like the idea maybe of demonic looking things. I'm not talking about like how should I say this? I'm not talking about people that just like a goat head or like certain
Right.
kinds of tattoos or heavy metal, death metal music or something like that. I mean people that like really don't like God, and so they
Right.
embrace this stuff that looks quote demonic. I just think it's ironic that because of what these things actually represent. They actually represent a drive to make people more moral and to follow the rules. And people today, it's evolved again where people are kind of embracing it because they think that it represents immorality and doing whatever you want. Do you understand what I'm saying? It kind of seems
Completely, yeah.
ironic
And
and
those are the people that
weird.
don't read books, you know? They love the aesthetic of it. I get that. And yeah, I mean, you just finished with Halloween, and then like Halloween's not even really done yet, and we already are seeing the stores flooded with Christmas stuff. We're already hearing the Christmas music. So you got that group too that just love it for the aesthetic. They love the meanness and scariness of it. Halloween's number one. They love the goat head, and that's a group. Other group is the people who just can't stand all the Christmas nonsense, and it's their way of defying. I won't be a part of your caroling and Christmas, and I'm church, and I don't want to do that. So it's like the anti-Christmas icon,
Oh yeah. It's Scrooge
rebellion.
Scrooge-esque. I've always
Yeah.
wondered, say, in 500 years, archaeologists dig up depictions of the Grinch, and how
Right.
the Grinch would be interpreted, because that's a relatively modern, invention. But if you were to
For
look
sure.
at it anthropologically, I've thought the Grinch is green, so you'd probably just associate that to the Green Man of history. This
Right. That would
character
make
that
sense.
lives out in the middle of nowhere. I mean, in Whoville, he lives up on the mountain, but he lives out in the woods or on the mountain, and he comes into town and frightens kids and steals Christmas. That's obviously the Grinch is based. People love the Grinch today. It's based on
Mhm.
these same stories, obviously.
Exactly.
How's
Yeah,
it going to
man.
be interpreted in 500 years? It's something I think.
It'll be interesting to say the least, man.
So what else do we have? We have Krampus. You got a little bit of a backstory on Krampus. There's other characters too. You said that go by different names. People, and myself included, I've always been confused by Belsnickel, Krampus.
Right.
Is Belsnickel the same as Krampus? Is it just a regional name?
Yeah, there's just so many different regional variations, and that's what you get. I mean, Krampus really didn't even become popular in the United States until like it started creeping in like the 1980s and 90s, when we started where there's more German and Austrian immigrants. I mean, it was World War II, honestly, that the end of World War II that kind of reignited Europe's love affair with Krampus, because in Austria it was during the fascists of World War II, they actually outlawed Krampus celebrations, and so did the Nazi Party, which was, I always felt odd because the Nazis were so like all about German culture and heritage, but they saw Krampus as like this uncontrollable device, and they also were trying to get away from Catholicism and the church, and so they actually outlawed Krampus celebrations, and you could even be sent to prison and arrested if you were caught doing the Krampus celebrations and dressing up. But once World War II ended, the Austrian people really wanted to rebel against that fascist law and the fascist control of the government. And so they really made a point to bring Krampus back to where it wasn't just kind of a muscle memory thing where it's December 5th, or it's, here comes the winter, we have to do our Krampus thing. They actually set up groups to not only preserve, but actively grow Krampus. We're in the 40s and 50s in Europe. You saw, or sorry, more in particularly Germany, you saw towns competing who had the biggest and best Krampus celebration.
So they embraced it almost as if it was a rebellion against
Right.
this strict mandate that you can't celebrate this history.
Exactly, because with the destruction of World War II, and people were just, everything was destroyed, and they had this massive switch in the way of life was, and I think that people were just like, we've had enough of it, and they really went back to their roots on that, to where they actively sought out the celebration of Krampus and really made it a big thing. And then in the United States, we had in the early 2000s, you started seeing Krampus festivals pop up in like Portland, LA, and New York, mostly led by people who had like no German ancestry at all, and then now, it's in everything. There's merch, there's movies, there's comics, there's, music. It's a much bigger thing.
I grew up in a Christian household. I'm
Same.
not a Christian now, but I grew up in a Christian. You did too?
Mm-hmm.
Which
Well, Catholic, I should say Catholic, not even Christian, but like ardent Catholic.
Okay, mine was Baptist, and it was acceptable. I know in Catholic schools this is acceptable, but I know in Baptist as well, it is acceptable to, they say, whip or hit children. You get spanked. That's a modern thing that some people still do, especially in religious households and even in some schools. I don't know about the Catholic schools anymore, but maybe they do that. The point is, though, Belsnickel, Krampus, etc., they all hit kids, or at least that's the threat. And so for people that are very religious to reject these symbols because, it's so violent, it's like, but they do that in the Catholic schools. Didn't the nuns used to beat the hell out of people?
All the time. But isn't that the hypocrisy of especially Christianity and their institutions, is the laughable hypocrisy?
If we beat these kids, it's okay. But if
right,
Krampus
exactly, they scream about immoralities, and yet so many of the church leaders are some of the worst people ever in human existence.
Well, then I guess you could also say to the defense of Christianity, the whole idea of using the image of the devil or the image of the demon, making people afraid to do pretty much anything because God's always watching.
Right.
There isn't necessarily a punishment, but there's a threat of punishment, which is really how all laws work. And that's kind of what Belsnickel and Krampus is. They don't necessarily use the switch, but it's there to symbolize the power that they have to be able to beat the hell out of you if they choose, or if you do something bad enough, you will receive punishment. It's it's a universality again.
Oh, absolutely. Because when you had the idea of Krampus starting out, it was the hitting with the birch branch, and then later on with the basket taking the children. I mean, it was the Catholic Church or Christian Church, really. They were the ones that said, now he's not just taking you, but he's specifically putting you in the basket to take you to hell. So you had that massive leap, that the church brought in with that.
So basically, from the implication of being hit across the hand or something, I think Belsnickel used to just like hit you in the hand, like you've been bad.
Right.
So the evolution from just being hit in the hand to being dragged down to hell, that's a pretty big.
It's a huge leap. Yeah.
It's a giant leap. A giant leap.
Yeah.
Well, the image that I have up is now, this is from an old postcard. For people who can't see it, it's exactly what Andrew is describing. It's a child in the back of a red, or inside of a red basket on the back of Krampus. Krampus is running around looking like the goat of the crossroads, the black god of the crossroads, the horns, the hooves with a switch and chains. But some of the older depictions or the different regional variations of Krampus, I'm going to assume that he didn't always necessarily look this devilish. He probably looked, I know you mentioned it a little bit, but he probably looked more like the original St. Nicholas, who was a man of the woods. He had brown coats, leaves, and
matted
sticks.
fur. Exactly. Yeah.
So that you described that a little bit already, but that is the original, and then he evolved alongside of being hit in the hand and being dragged to hell. He evolved from having that kind of woody feel to looking like a demonic goat running around. So in other words, I guess what I'm saying is the Krampus that people are scared of is actually a creation of the church.
Exactly.
It's not the original story.
Definitely. And then, like in the 18th century, the period of Enlightenment, we saw almost like a cartooning of Krampus, where people wanted to get across the idea that Krampus was an archaic idea from an uneducated, uncivilized past. And so those depictions during that time of Krampus were actually, a lot of them were quite cartoonish to make the idea of Krampus not even scary, but like stupid and childish. And why would you believe in something so dumb? And kid, you're a child. So yeah, there's all these different variations, and Krampus almost dying out multiple times.
Where do you think this might just be a personal opinion thing, unless you have some details otherwise, but where is he most popular in those Germanic regions? Is there a particular area?
Austria, Bavaria. I mean, all throughout the Alps. I mean, obviously the Alps stretch for all over, right across Europe. But I mean, Germany is the country of Germany is the heart of Krampus, and then it just kind of depends on what region. But I mean, Germany really is the heart of Krampus territory. I mean, that's where truly Krampus was the biggest and best.
It sounds pretty German.
Yeah.
Krampus and beating children who disobey.
Right.
So, as I said, this is also found in Japan, and I would assume that if we did enough digging, we would find this in more than just Japan and Germany. This speaks to, in regard to religion, which typically all religions, every religion, typically, especially the Abrahamic faiths, they present themselves as injecting morality and laws and commandments and whatnot, which is not a bad thing. But you don't need those commandments to know not to murder and to know not to steal, because a lot of Buddhist countries have lower crime rates than Christian countries. So
Right.
clearly don't need that. So I guess what I'm getting at here, just thinking out loud, is that all of the stuff that we know as Krampus or these other monsters, you could look at Grilla, for example, Befana, the Italian
Befana,
Christmas
yeah.
witch. This is kind of like an early way, an archaic way perhaps, but an early way of trying to create order in society,
Right.
To inject morals into society. It's another version of, here are 10 commandments from God, follow these 10 commandments. It's kind of, I look at it kind of like that. It's kind of a version of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was, obviously one of the fun things about celebrating Krampus and Krampus night was that was like socially acceptable chaos. It was almost like that was the one day of the year where you could get away with being a bit crazy. And I think that's, again, one of the reasons why the church tried to outlaw it so much, especially during when the Protestants and the Catholic faith were really warring against each other. I think 16th, 17th century, the referendum, whatever you want to call it, where that's when we saw especially across Europe and especially in Germany, where celebrating Krampus was outlawed. And then you saw when people were moving from more rural areas of the Alps, especially into the larger cities, they weren't bringing the tradition of Krampus with them. And so that was another time where we started to see it die out, where it kind of went underground, and again, back to those rural areas who still fought to kind of keep it alive.
I found a great picture of what you were describing earlier. This is an image of Saint Nicholas and Krampus behind him, and the child is being, I believe, offered an apple, or there's a switch. So you either get the reward or you get the punishment, and there's Krampus as the muscle standing behind him.
Yeah.
Showing you, which to me, I know that you know the Bible too. If you read the book of Job, Job talks about how God allowed the devil to tempt Job, right?
Right.
The devil essentially is in the employment of God to punish those and to tempt and to test those under God's authority. That's what this story is, and it predates, the biblical stories, but it's the same exact concept. It's literally the same concept.
Exactly. Yeah, we see that play out time and time again. I mean, and later depictions of Krampus. I mean, especially with the whole Saint Nicholas character, you would see Saint Nicholas really like pulling along him by the chains, and
By the
didn't
chains, yeah.
have just have chains. He had like what would amount to be like handcuffs essentially that Nicholas Saint Nicholas was in total control of. And so again, it was the church imposing its authority over demons, and that if you did not have the church in your life keeping you safe from the demon, you're going to get it, the demon will get you. So go to
Interesting.
church and give us your tithing.
If it appears to be an apple in this picture, I would think that today children would find both options to be punishment. The apple or the switch.
Fair.
So we have about half the show left. We've got Andrew Cox with us from Nexus Occult Books. I'm Ryan Gable. This is The Secret Teachings. Check out the website, tstradio.info. Get a copy of Occult Arcana. And very briefly, Andrew, where can people find Nexus Occult Books? I know that you sell a lot of books online too, and you've got an amazing collection of stuff. Where can people find it?
Absolutely. You can visit us online at nexusoccult.com. And on Instagram and Facebook, we're actually in the process of redoing our entire online store. So our online store is an eBay based platform. But today I just got back from a crazy estate sale where I purchased far too much stuff. But all that stuff will be going up online over the next couple of weeks. And it's some really amazing books and a lot of cool stuff for the store that won't be online. So you can come visit us in Tucson. But all of our information is on our website, nexusoccult.com.
You got some Krampus books too, I know.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. And another fun thing that we just launched about a month ago, what I'm really excited about is we launched a website called occulttucson.com. And that is a all local based website that features all the stores that are in like the new age, metaphysical, occult, and oddity community. It even has a local reader and healer directory for people in Tucson that practice tarot, astrology, psychic medium. They do it in person and online. There's a bunch of other local resources for Tucsonans. But it's really amazing to have all these stores that are present in our local community. We really love to promote everybody and not just us.
Oh, that's cool. I think I saw a link to that. I just pulled it up on the screen here, occulttucson.com. That's cool. So let me ask you this, because when I'm asked to be a guest on a show and I do any kind of preparation and then I get on the show and we start talking and then I end up not getting through 1% of what I want to get through that I feel is good enough, I get maybe 25%. So I know that you have a lot of information on Krampus.
Right.
Where would you like to take the show, and what would you like to teach people about Krampus or related Krampus-like things?
That's a great question. I think the importance for me of Krampus was getting back to the roots of where Krampus began, because I see so much of what we kind of see what happened with Krampus, what happens a lot in the occult, where we easily pass over the origins of so many different deities and spirits and gods and goddesses, whatever you want to call them, where I miss people going back to do the digging of the research to really understand the origins. And that's something that I tend to harp on a lot when we have people come in who want to work with certain spirits or deities, regardless of who they are. They want to jump right into practice and don't do the time to sit there and hunt down and do the real research. They always try to do this kind of surface level thing, and then they start kicking open the door of Anubis or Hecate or Lilith and try to get their attention.
I know that for a fact, because I've spent considerable amount of time in your store and even did some work there, and people would come in. I remember this one person came in and just asked for, I want all the books on like Beelzebub. And I'm trying to, and I was like, have you ever done this before? No, I just Beelzebub. This was a cool spirit or something. I was like, well, probably shouldn't just contact Beelzebub. It's probably not a good idea, but all right.
It's a horrible idea. Absolutely. But we have a saying at Nexus, and that is, magic's got to eat, and
Yeah.
you know, so much.
Beelzebub gave me a finder's fee for that one.
Nice, good. I'm glad. I'm sure he did. Yeah. And so I think while celebrating Krampus is definitely something fun, especially for the whole family. I think it's great. I think more people should do it. That's fine. But you know, to take the time to go through and understand and appreciate where the origins of Krampus and his story came about, because for thousands of years, you know, this wasn't just myth, you know, this was a way of life, and there was something very visceral and real. Krampus wasn't a person or a thing that was just one night a year. I mean, Krampus was an embodiment of not just what is now considered Christmas time, but of winter, the environment, the harshness of reality, where child mortality was so high during that time. I love that story of Krampus, and yeah, I wish more people would just kind of dig into that a little bit more, as opposed to just going to the festivals with their kids. You know, get a book for them. They actually make some really cool kid Krampus books. That's fun, but you know, it's like your Grimm's fairy tales. You know, those all came from someplace. Take the time to sit down and read yourself, or read to your children, and have them really appreciate and understand what truly went on to bring Krampus from where it was to where it is now. I mean, you're talking hundreds and hundreds of years, actually a couple thousand years of suffering and pain to bring Krampus to where you get to have fun with it for one night.
Even or especially, I should say, especially if you have a Germanic background. You
Yeah.
know, my great grandma's name was Grimm. So
Nice.
my family definitely has those German roots, and I find it fascinating to learn the history of this stuff. And it's interesting, again, looking at other cultures and looking at what you just said, that this is a year-round thing. Over here in Japan, and then I think probably more famous than what you find in Japan, you find it in the Slavic lore. There is a witch named
Baba
Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga, right? And Baba Yaga, almost identical to here in Japan, we have the Yamamba. She's known as the mountain witch. And her story is that she is the woman of the woods, and she comes to your house. She can't come inside your house unless you give her permission, like a vampire.
I was gonna say, just like a vampire.
It's like a vampire. And usually the story is she comes to the house when the parents have left, and she represents danger, and she knocks on the door. This is year round. This isn't just holidays. And she knocks on the door and asks the kids, "Can I come inside?" Or tries to trick them. This is the Hansel and Gretel story.
Right.
And tries to trick them, lure them into the woods, gives them treats, and then kills them. So you find that story. It's a year-round story. You find
That's
it in
awesome.
Japan, you find it in the Slavic lore, and you find it in Germanic lore. It's a universal thing, and it's year-round. It's not confined to the holidays.
That's really amazing. I mean, I didn't know that, and I'd love to learn more about that. And that's funny because, as you see too, that's not just the culture of the idea, the mythology, folklore of the idea too, but so often you see these spirits and deities used, as we're saying earlier, like as teaching tools. I mean, that was part of the culture again, that we've lost that link. You know, how many parents are telling their kids not to open the door because Baba Yaga, or the Japanese version of it? I mean, do you still find that they use that in Japan?
I don't think they use it literally, but they
Right.
use it as, I mean, I've been to a Kappa shrine, so it's incorporated into
Really?
daily life. Yeah, there's at least one major shrine in Tokyo, and funny enough, I don't think I realized this the first time I visited it, but I was trying to figure out why, because my wife told me everybody brings their babies here. And I was confused. I was like, but I thought Kappa was like a water spirit. Why do people bring their children here to the shrine? And I started thinking, and then she explained it to me. Oh, it's like water, it's like baptism, it's like purity and cleansing and protection. And ultimately that's what the shrine and that's what the kappa represents. It represents the protection of children. So it's not a spirit that's coming to kill the child. It's actually there to protect the child. It's like a lifeguard.
Right.
And the lifeguard says, you can't go swimming right now. It's really dangerous. And you say, oh, you're just mean. I want to go swimming anyway. The lifeguard's trying to protect you. The
Right.
kappa's trying to protect you. So it's part of daily life here. It's a great question, because sometimes I think, I wonder, Like, is this how people treated these stories 500 years ago as well? They didn't see it as literal, and we look back and think, "Oh, they're primitive. They thought this
Right.
stuff was real." I actually think they probably didn't. It was probably just purely metaphoric.
Mhm.
And today, I don't think it's no different. Maybe in our very archaic times, maybe people thought it was literal. But I think that if we look back on today, as I said earlier, from the vantage point of 500 years from now, we'd probably think that there were people today who thought this stuff was literal when they don't. They know it's metaphor.
That's
Um,
super interesting. Yeah, I'm curious because in American culture, especially obviously during Halloween, you know, you have people dress up as vampires, and of course during the Christmas time, you have people dress up like Krampus and Santa. In Japan, do you have something similar where the people are dressing up as a kappa for whatever reason, or this spirit here?
yeah, they actually you flipped the interview. Now you're interviewing me. Yeah, they
Sorry, I
have
can't help it.
they have it depends on the prefecture, the region, the
Mhm.
history of that region. But a lot of it's tied to Buddhism. But there is I don't think people dress up like kappa, but people definitely dress up like oni. Um,
Oh,
you know how Starbucks is on every corner in the
right.
US? Well, here in Japan, there's a festival on every corner all the time. There's a festival
Really?
going on, like yeah, because they're based on the seasons, so you're always in a season. So they have, like, a beginning of season, an end of season. They've got a beginning of the year, end of year, middle of the year. They're still across the country, still very focused on those old traditional, ways, and oftentimes you will see I haven't been to too many, but I have seen some people utilizing the oni masks
Hmm.
uh, for a procession of bringing they call them God carts, so they're
Right.
bringing the spirit through the town. So I have seen that. Yeah, I don't think it's a wide variety, but the oni definitely, or the namahage for
Right,
the
right.
New Year's celebration.
Well, that's so cool because I mean, and it's so bizarre because you don't see any of that really in the United States. I mean, obviously we have Halloween, and that's the one night where people dress up, and now we have the Krampus night and the Krampus run. You know, again, that's typically only like one day. You know, we don't really have it where people are celebrating, you know, changes of seasons. You just don't see that really here. It's definitely not widespread. I mean, I find that fascinating and really awesome, and kind of sad that we don't I get it. We're kind of a melting pot of so many different cultures. So yeah, that makes sense. But it is kind of sad to me to where we seem to don't have such a good connection to any type of heritage or roots to long-term mythology and folklore like you do in Japan or obviously in Germany or other parts of the world.
That
And
could be a different show, Andrew, because what you're saying right now, this is a great show topic. It's a great thing to think about because I think what you're saying is you could see it with we don't have to discuss what's happening with American culture in general,
Right.
but I think that maybe is why culture in the United States seems to be deteriorating rapidly because we don't have any
Agreed.
bas- even for our own like standard American like founding history, most people don't know that. When you're talking about the like Joseph Campbell, the foundational myths that hold society together as an American, I feel like we don't have that at all.
No, yeah, you don't see that. Yeah, you don't have that common bond of some type of community ritual. Really, is what that is. You don't have that, and I think that's I think why you can see such a massive difference between culture here in America and just say culture in Japan. I mean, you and I have talked about this before. I know we're kind of getting off the topic of Krampus. Sorry, I can't help it. With this is where like it's so clean in Japan, right? You know, and it's
On average, yeah.
there's definitely like an idea of respect and honor is still very much a daily part. And not to say that we don't have that in America, but it's vastly different uh, in the two cultures.
Well, in American history, you have a tremendous number of German immigrants, right? Which
Oh,
is what you were
absolutely.
discussing earlier with Krampus coming to the US. But I think that, I mean, maybe just even like 75 years ago, but definitely 100 years ago in the United States, you read about these different immigrant communities, the Italians, the Germans,
Mhm.
etc., and they did maintain their culture.
Right.
They did maintain their traditions. And that doesn't, I mean, you can find a Chinatown today, you can still
Mhm.
find like a German town or something like that,
Sure.
or an Italian side of town. But I don't know what that is, because it feels like all those communities, and I don't know because I don't spend time in them, but it feels like, generally speaking, all of that's just been put to the wayside for being American, which is kind of
Right.
ironic because being an American means that you're bringing your culture and incorporating it into that melting pot. It feels like we've lost so many individual cultural traditions in the process. In other words, like being an American means just forgetting all of that and being this kind of like corporate thing, and
Right.
nothing about history matters. Which
Starbucks and Coca-Cola and McDonald's is now our,
that's the
it's now our culture.
Well, actually, that's a great point. That is the culture.
Right.
KFC, McDonald's, Coca-Cola. Exactly. That's the culture.
Right.
Yeah.
And when I see these pictures that you're bringing up, and I don't have anything here in America that I can relate that to, and that's kind of upsetting. I don't see that. Like, okay, Krampus, that's one thing brought over, but it's like that's so quick and fleeting, and it's not even for a day. It's just for like the hour you go to a place
Yeah.
to see something, or like the 5 minutes you're at Nexus to do it.
Well,
And that kind of like wants me, like my brain starts to work of like, how can I start coming up with more cultural things to start including, not just in my own life, but in my community, because like, I see that, and that's kind of that's so awesome to see, but like I don't have that here, and my brain wants that.
Yeah, that's probably in our genetics, because you and
Right.
I are not the only people that feel this way. There's a lot of people that
Yeah.
feel this way. You're craving learning about these things because it's what makes you human. It's what builds our communities and our society. There is there is a kind of a new cultural mythos developing, where rather than Krampus is going to get you or the mountain witch is going to get you, in more conservative political circles, it's more like, don't go to places like New York City because the liberal wacko is going to get you on the subway. So that's like a new cultural myth that's politically developing and evolving.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. And that's insane. That's just insanity to me. It's insane, you know? Like, I don't it's like, how did we get here? So I don't know. I know. I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and there's a big Italian community in Memphis. We used to go to the Italian festivals that we would have in Memphis, and it'd be these like week-long cook-offs where just food and games and bocce ball and singing and dancing and fun. And living here in Tucson, I don't really see too much of that, because I think a lot of that too is that, well, obviously we have a large Mexican American population, we have a decent size indigenous culture here, but it's like almost like there's factions, and you're not allowed to cross into it, especially now with everything so damn political. You just can't escape the divisiveness of the politics, where you kind of don't even dare to go across the street, and because I don't know who I'm going to upset just because of what I look like.
What is your heritage? Is it Italian?
I am like half Italian, a quarter Swedish, and then a quarter UK. So England, Scotland, and Ireland.
See, I think that actually answers our question. I think that's why, because what happens is, rather than looking at, like, for me, I know that my heritage is German and there's some English mixed in there, but there's definitely a lot of German. And your heritage, half Italian, and what you just said. That's where all of these traditions come from, within the heritage and the culture. But we're too busy focusing on skin color,
right?
Black versus white versus brown,
Mhm.
rather than looking at the cultural things that actually unite us all. We just call things by different names because we have different languages.
No, exactly, and that's great. I mean, I have Latino children. The mother of my children is Mexican. She's American, but I mean, she's Latino and Hispanic in culture. My adopted son's 100% Latino. My two biological children are half, and that's something that, at least when they were kids, we used to do, is like incorporate the piñata and the real fiesta atmosphere. I mean, their mom went away, I mean, years and years and years ago. And, bad on me to not, I didn't, I mean, obviously they grew out of things like that. And we obviously lost touch with that side of the family for lots of different reasons. But, looking back, I mean, I think that I might have dropped the ball a little bit culturally. And that's something that I really think I should start working on. That at least I want to work on, is bringing back some type of cultural appreciation, and hopefully I won't get shot or be called a racist or something stupid.
Well, let's do this with the short time we have left. There's two things I want to do really quick. Since you have that Italian heritage, tell us about Befana, what you know about Befana, the Italian Christmas witch, if you know anything about
a little bit. Yeah, I think that's where we get the story of Cole from.
Really?
Yeah,
Really?
I'm pretty sure, because she wasn't necessarily, I mean, she was mostly benevolent, the Christmas witch, but at this, she did have she would, if I'm almost positive that she was the one that would give bad children coal if they misbehaved. But we didn't celebrate that, even as like, especially my mom's side, they were like hardcore Italian, but they did not, and they, like, to the point they spoke Italian. But I didn't find out about the Italian witch until, like, I don't know, when I started reading into the occult, and just happened through some Italian witchcraft. But that was never spoken of. But again, you might look at that as from the Catholic upbringing that we have, where you didn't want to cross that line into witchcraft.
Yeah, actually, this particular image I have on the screen here, for people who can't see it, she looks very similar to Belsnickel. She has a Krampus. She has a basket on her back. She has a switch. I believe in the stories, I think she delivers, it might be coal. She delivers something into the boots or the socks.
Right, the shoes, yeah, something like that, yeah.
Okay, so we got Befana. One last thing. For people to learn about culture, history, to focus on their heritages rather than, quote, race, and to learn about some of these things we're talking about tonight, recommendations for books, and then close the show out for us, please. We got about 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes total.
Okay, well, when it comes to books, I'm always, I don't care about anything other than the secret teachings of all ages, and that does cover tons of mythology and folklore and culture. I mean, and it covers it in a sense where, yeah, there's a lot of other stuff too, but it's not dogmatic. It's not overly academic
at all.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a book that's a brick, and it's my desert island. I push that book on everybody that comes to the door. That is our #1 selling book. I've sold so many damn copies of it and everyone I've sold it to absolutely loves it, because it's such an incredible book, and it's so important. So if for your listeners, if you haven't read it, I mean, you can get it for like $30 paperback, y'all. I mean, it's The Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. There has never been a better book written.
You can even read that, by the way. I think I showed you this in the store one time. You can read that on the CIA's website.
Oh, really?
Did you know? Look at CIA.gov. No. They actually have it on their website. It's that important.
That's amazing. That's incredible, man. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'd recommend getting the physical print. I don't really trust what the CIA put on
exactly.
their website.
I don't trust anything that's online, especially from the freaking CIA. God, those guys are maniacs. Can you imagine that?
There's also, have you ever read this book, Christian Rost and Claudia Mueller Ebeling, Pagan Christmas?
Oh yeah. I'm sorry. Yes, I had. That book's amazing. That's a really great book.
Yeah, amazing pictures. It has all the botanical history of Christmas, which is Christmas is a botanical holiday.
For sure.
All about nuts and seeds and plants and trees and all that. So
yeah, and the funny thing about like caroling came from wassailing, and wassail is like a spiced rum drink.
How did you know that?
I'm stupid. I'm a high functioning moron that's really well read.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wassailing. They used to like make this spice warm drink, and they would actually sing to the trees in their orchards and pour the wassail on the roots, and then they would go through town singing and drinking, and that's what became wassailing, which led to caroling.
Wow, I did not know that. I learned something from Andrew Cox tonight. I hope that you learned something from Andrew tonight. Check out Nexus Occult Books and Oddities. It's in Tucson, Arizona. He's on Instagram. I think it's Nexus Occult, right?
Yep.
Nexus Occult. All right, Nexus Occult on Instagram. I will have the links below in the show description. An hour special tonight. It's beginning to look a lot like Krampus. Depending on when you're listening to this, check out the archive and look for Ground Zero for December 22nd. I will be hosting, or I did host. And if you listen to that episode, you will hear me for an hour. Then you will hear Andrew and I for another hour, a different interview. And then you will hear me and Chad Lewis, who authored a book about winter legends. So we have a fun 3-hour Ground Zero show that you can download in the Secret Teachings archive, tstradio.info. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thank you for having me back, man.
It's beginning to look a lot like Krampus. Gruß vom Krampus. Tonight on the Secret Teachings. Stay safe, stay informed, stay healthy. I will talk to you on the next broadcast. All right, we are clear. Good to go.
Awesome, dude.
Yeah, this book is amazing. I love this.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's so funny though. You didn't know about waffling, man.
I did not. You taught me something. I did not know that. Let's see. I had a book I was going to ask you about, but I can't find it now. Also, maybe I'll send you a picture of it later. Anyway, we are good to go. I got to do a sound check with them in like 15 minutes here. And
Okay.
Are you going to have time to listen to any of the first hour?
Possibly. I bought all those books, so I'm gonna try to listen to it while I'm doing books. So hopefully I'll be able to do both of those at the same time.
No worries. No worries.
Okay.
Just-
And when I come back, what are we going to be talking about? More Krampus?
Basically the same thing. Yeah, basically the same thing.
Yeah, that's fine. We can do it. Yeah. I literally I typed out 5 pages of notes.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's perfect. Well, it'll be like this. So for example, just so you're aware. So example, it's 9 o'clock. Well, what time is it there? 7 o'clock?
7 o'clock, yeah.
Okay, so it's 7 o'clock. The show begins when you're on StreamYard with me. We'll be sitting there. Okay, it's 7 o'clock. It starts at 7:06. The music comes in. I will start at 7:07. I will say this is Ground Zero. And then I will go right to you. I will give a very brief intro because the second hour, new networks come in. Very brief intro. We'll go right to you. And then that lasts from 7 minutes past the hour until 14 minutes and 50 seconds. You don't have to know this. I'm just saying it's
That's okay. No, it's good to know. Yeah.
About 7.5 minutes of talking.
Okay.
You'll hear music come in, and when you hear, if you're talking when the music comes in, try to cut off really fast because I've got 30 seconds to wind down and get out before the hard break.
Gotcha.
And then very, very briefly, I'm looking at the clock here. The second segment will start at 20 minutes past the hour. That goes to 28.5, so that's 9 minutes. Okay, so it's 7, 9, 7, 9 are the segments. They're short.
Sure.
But it's a lot of people listening, so.
Yeah, well, since it's short, it'll be easier for me to stick completely on topic with Krampus. I know. Sorry, I kind of went off on like
no.
My
It's
brain
perfect.
breaking and like wanting mythology, wanting family culture.
No, the cult. I'm glad we talked about that. That is so
Me too.
important.
Mm-hmm.
That is so important. In fact, maybe I might even bring that up tonight. But no, I'm going to be focused on Krampus, Belsnickel, Befana, Yuki Onna, which is the woman who personifies the winter over here in Japan.
Nice.
What's that other one? Joulupukki?
Something. Yeah, that sounds familiar.
That's like it's like a merger of Santa and something else.
Right.
But I'm going to focus on all that tonight.
Okay.
So if you end up going into something else, it's totally.
I'll keep it on Krampus. I got it.
All right. Krampus expert though.
All right, brother. Thank you so much, man. And yeah, I'll just follow the link that you sent me. I got it. And less than 2 hours.
Yep. Sounds good. And don't change your settings. Everything sounds fantastic. There will not be video.
Okay.
This is important. I forgot to tell you. So when you log on, make sure that you turn your video off.
Turn video off. Okay.
Because it'll help with the they call it bandwidth. It'll help.
Gotcha.
Sound. All right.
Perfect, brother.
Perfect. All right. You sound good. Everything sounded good for that show. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.